Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Elevate, where we strengthen our relationships so we can elevate our lives.
Let's get it. This is episode 99.
Ooh.
Before we move forward with this topic, I want to say that for episode 100, we're going to be doing kind of like a Q&A style and also letting you guys know where the podcast is headed to. So if you have any questions you want us to answer about the podcast, about us, you can either leave it in the comment section of this video or message us on Instagram at jessica.darwin.
Yes, there's a lot going on right now. We're going to be...
We'll talk about it all in that video.
Yeah, in terms of business, we're like learning a lot in this journey since we opened up our photography studio, Toto Studio. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited for what we have learned. And you guys will see, what's going to be going on. If you guys follow us on Instagram, you guys will see some changes there. And yeah, I don't want to say too much right now. But yeah, just follow along if you guys want to see where we're headed.
And ask us any questions on Instagram. And we'll answer them for the next video.
But I'm very excited where we're headed, so don't miss out.
What you got?
Okay, so recently I came along this video where
on TikTok.
No, this one was on Instagram, where this young lady just had a baby and she was kind of showing how she was so grateful to have a mother who was so present for her once she gave birth. So she like shows little clips of like her burping the baby and then her mom coming over and saying like, come on, I'll help you burp the baby, go take a nap, or like get some rest.
So the kid's grandmother.
Yeah, the child's grandmother. And I just thought it was such a beautiful video that shows how the grandmother just enjoys to be involved in this aspect of her daughter's motherhood. And you can see in the video that she just wants her daughter to have that peace and that helping hand that you so desperately need when you are like a mom of a newborn, right? Because let's face it.
Especially first child.
Yeah, and let's face it, like even if you have your partner with you and they help you out, it's exhausting. Depending on, everyone is different. Sometimes you get a baby who's like really quiet and doesn't cry as much and, they may let you sleep or get enough rest. But then you have babies who really do not give you much of a break.
Armani.
And both parents can feel exhausted, and having like that helping hand, even if it's not, maybe your mother is not around anymore, unfortunately, but even having like an uncle and aunt, someone that just wants to like be around and help out, even when it comes to like the mother being fed, something as simple as that, just like bringing some food to like this mother who just gave birth, you know, like the first couple of weeks are just such a transition for any parent that any helping hand is just, I feel like any parent will be greatly appreciative of that.
And you guys got it good, you and your sister. Like your mom is always there after you girls give birth, you women give birth.
And it's not something that we ask for. That's just like in my mom's nature. She's just like that. She's that kind of grandma. She wants to be around. She wants to like see the
grandma
babies.
And mother.
But you also hear the other side where you hear some grandmas say like, well, that's not my job anymore. Like I've already raised you. And at first, I would like to say that years ago, I really understood that. Like I really was like, yeah, like they're right. It's their time to like have fun and
shine
and live their life, without responsibility, which is true still, because even till this day, my mother is fully involved with my kids and I'm blessed for that. My mother, anytime that I need my kids to be taken care of, I take them to my mother, and I'm going to be forever indebted to my mom for that. Like even if she, to her is not, I don't owe her anything.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that is such a blessing. I know many moms, especially nowadays, that don't have that helping hand. That don't have the privilege to say, you know what, I have to go somewhere and have that peace of mind, I'm just going to leave them with grandma. Sometimes the grandma is alive and sometimes they just don't want to take care of the kids. You know,
it also depends on the parents too, though, because there are some parents that kind of like abuse that power and they're just like, oh, the kid's with you every single weekend. Like, do what you got to do. And like, not only just that, then if you also have like kids that are not calm kids and they're just like trouble kids and you're just trying to drop them off because you're tired of them. Yeah, not even grandma's going to want to put up with them.
Because, you have an excellent point.
Because at that point, it's like, yeah, I did raise your ass and I'm done with you. Now I got to raise your kid who's a pain in my ass.
You have an excellent point there because, you know, it's very easily to just play the blame game and say, oh, my grandma, you know, my mother doesn't want to be a grandma. She doesn't want to be involved like that. But again, like,
some badass kids.
I try to be as fair as possible. Like, I feel like I'm a very fair person when it comes to things like that. Even though my kids, I feel, are not super like troublemakers, like they're kids, they're not saints, you know, it's not like you don't feel them at all, but I feel like my kids are pretty well behaved. And if anything were to happen, I always tell my mom, like, you know, you let me know, like you're the grandma, like I give you full permission to like let them know. I'm not that parent. And if I don't know, like, let's say my little brother still lives with my mom. If he sees that they do something, you know, like he knows he's fully free to hit me up and say, you know what, Zena has been misbehaving, or Armani, and he knows to like let them know that is not okay. Yeah. I'm not the parent to just be like, oh no, that's my kid, don't scream at them, especially if it's my mother and I know exactly how she raised me and the kind of person that she is. She has full permission to discipline my kids. Yep. And I feel like some parents are not okay with that. And again, this is, I guess, a case by case situation because, I mean, not every grandparent is the same. And based on how your mother or father raised you, you know if you can trust your mother or father with your own kids.
Well, and it's also like, let's face it, like parenting now, like we parent different than the way our parents parent. And younger generations are even worse, different than us. So it's like, if they're dropping their kids off and their parenting style is very like back in time, old school, they're not gonna feel, they're gonna be like, don't talk to my kid like that, or don't discipline like that. Like, you gotta be gentle and, you know, sit them down. Some grandparents are just like, nah, like you're not doing this.
Yeah. To be completely honest, I feel like I completely trust my parents because they're not abusive. They were never abusive with me. You know, I got my little pow-pows here and there, but that's about it. It was nothing to the extreme. And so I know my parents, right? So I trust them fully. And, you know, there may be certain things that we may disagree on, but they're like very minuscule things that I take care of in my household. And I feel that's why my mom, you know, she doesn't feel like maybe it's like a chore to take care of my kids because I give her full permission to be the adult in the room.
Well, but your mother also doesn't step over the boundary that, you know, she doesn't try to overrule us.
Correct.
And there is grandparents that do try, like, nah, like, I'm your grandma and I'm your mom's mom, so you're going to listen to me.
Correct. That's also, I love the points you're bringing, right? Because that's why I feel comfortable with leaving my kids with my mom all the time. And, you know, again, she raised me and I feel like she did a great job, right? And so... What was it that you said again? I'm sorry.
No, that she doesn't override or, you know, if something happens and she's like, oh, she'll call me or she'll call you and like ask daddy first or ask
I always feel like she doesn't overstep any boundaries with my parenting. And anytime that maybe she kind of has because of her opinion on a certain topic, I let her know, like, no, I feel this and this way about that. And I don't feel like she tries to push her thinking on my kids. Again, my mom and I are very similar in parenting styles. I feel like I've picked up on her parenting styles as a parent myself.
I think it'll just be that she's a little softer. So
if anything,
yeah.
I feel
mean,
like,
that's usually what it is. Like,
if
we'll
anything,
be like, nah,
yeah,
we don't rock with that.
if anything, I feel like my mom is a little softer with her grandkids than she ever was with me or any of my siblings. And I tell her, I'm like, okay,
no, eso está bien. I'm like,
what is going on here? Like, you would have never allowed me to do that when I was a kid. And she's like, but they're kids. I'm like, you wasn't saying that when I was a kid. But it's cool, she sees it as it's my time to parent, and she leaves that job to me. She leaves a lot of the discipline to me, and so that's why I feel like she doesn't really have to do much of the disciplining with my kids, because I do most of it. And if at any point they get out of line and she tells me, I saw this and this behavior going on, she knows I'm going to take care of it.
Or she won't tell us. That's one thing she does. Sometimes she backs them up.
Yeah.
So like if they,
And I'm the one telling her, like, no, you need to tell me when something is not going right.
It'll be like something small, like I don't know. Like
right.
Zena didn't listen to something, but then she doesn't tell us that Zena did that. But Armani will be like, oh, Zena wasn't listening to my mom.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really? Well, let's call her and find out. And they're like, oh, shit.
Yeah. But if it's anything that I feel, if my mom ever feels like it's something major that needs to be brought up to us, she definitely doesn't hesitate. And she does tell us, because she does care for them being raised right. So, yeah, I feel like just watching this video, I was just analyzing, even my own thoughts. Because when I was younger, I used to think, you know what? Like, anytime I would hear like a grandma say, well, I already raised you. Like, I don't want to raise your kids as well. I used to think, yeah, like, they're right. Like, they already raised us. We're big. If we have our kids, that's our responsibility. Like, that's up to us, which is not wrong.
Yeah.
But grandparents are such an essential part, I feel like, of a child's development.
Yeah.
Especially if they're healthy people, because obviously not everyone is, you as a parent should evaluate who is healthy or who's a healthy person to have around your kids, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that sometimes it doesn't necessarily even have to be grandparents. If there's anybody that helps you out, like sometimes it'd be like aunts and uncles that are more present than the grandparents, or grandparents are not there. So don't ever let like the second family that takes care of your kids override your thing. Like, it should always go through you. Not like, oh, I listen more to my aunt than I listen to my mom.
Of course. But what I'm saying is, to have that sense of community or feeling that to have your grandparents, but your parents, be involved in your kids' lives should be a blessing, right? And what is more beautiful than giving birth, and having your mother there to understand everything you're going through, because they've been through it themselves, and to have a grandmother next to you understanding exactly everything you're going through and making sure you don't feel alone.
Yeah.
That there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah.
And before, when I was younger and I have kids of my own, I would just think of it from a very superficial level. But now that I'm older and, I'm starting to understand the value of family, right? The value, not that I didn't value my family before, because I've always loved my family, but now that I understand the roles that, how do I say this? How important those roles are in our kids growing up. For example, maybe I thought that way because I grew up without my grandparents around. So I really didn't have my grandparents around. I only had my parents. And when I see other families who have their grandparents around and, and how, for example, baseball, right? Sometimes you see some of these families who, they have the little boy in baseball, and let's say the father or the mother are working and they can't take the kid to baseball. But the grandparent sees that this child has a passion for baseball. Sometimes you see the grandfather taking over that role and saying, no, you can't take him to practice, but I'll make that commitment and I'll take him to practice. And I know that as a parent, having that support is everything. because, you know, sometimes we try, like for us even, like it's really hard. We have my kids' grandparents, which are my parents, of course, are involved in my kids' lives. But let's say, for instance, my father doesn't have that privilege of being so present, or let's say taking on those roles.
Yeah, like
because
retired.
he himself is not retired yet, and he just doesn't have the privilege. He's still working. But to be able to have grandparents who at any given point can just lend you that hand with the raising of your kids is a privilege and an honor.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's also, I guess, not even the kids or your parents. It's just that person's personality.
It's just also your kids having that bond with grandma and grandpa.
Yeah, but that grandparent has to be. There's grandparents that are just like, love me. I'm your grandparent. Like, you gotta love me.
You're
like,
right.
I'm your grandparent. Like, why don't you love me?
Yeah.
Like,
and that's something that's gained.
Yeah, and then for a kid, as bad as it sounds, it's just like, you are a very older person. So in order for that child to connect with you because you're so old, they're either gonna just look at you like a grumpy old person, or, hey, you're a soft, old, like caring, loving person.
Yeah.
So like, there's two ways you can be really grumpy and old person, or this is my grandma, my grandpa. Like, I love them. They're like caring, loving.
But that's the job of the adult.
That's what I'm saying. It's more like a personal thing.
Yes.
Because it's not just, I'm the grandparent. Like, you have to love me and show me endless amount of love, because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So now that I look at these type of videos, they really touch my heart. And instead of me thinking in my head, you know, when my kids are older and they have their own family, like, I'm going to be free, you know, I get to do, yes, I will. I will be free in a certain way, because, you know, I won't have little kids to take care of like that. And, you know, babysitting is like once in a while. They're not with you 24/7. So you do gain some of that freedom back. But now I'm more like looking forward to when my kids get older and they have kids. I know there's a long way to go, but I have these thoughts in my head, like when I'm older, you know, and I'm a grandma, like I want to be that grandma.
And
like,
you also, like, the word grandma does. I know I was just saying like old and grumpy, but like, you don't have to be
old.
But what I mean is, like, they still look at you like you are the oldest person that they know. So,
of course.
Not just like wrinkled white hair. Like.
But now I think of myself in that light, you know, like I would like to be that grandma in the future. I would like to be that grandma that's like, okay, like I know, let's say, for example, my kids are pursuing their own business. I know what that's like, you know, I know that it's really difficult to start, to be an entrepreneur, to start something new, to start, you know, a business of your own. I would like to be that helping hand. Like, I would like to be that grandparent, to be like, don't worry, Zena, like, just bring Zoe over. I'll take care of her, you know, like, you know. And I want to be that grandma that's like, that feels that
support system.
Yes, that they feel like they are supported by me, and I'm the one that spoils them when they're with me, you know. And, you know, even if, I don't know, however many kids my kids decide to have, if they have any, well, such and such has gymnastics and the other one has to go to baseball. It's on the same day. Like, Mom, can you like help me? Of course, I'll take, you know, so and so to gymnastics. You know, I want to be involved. Like, I see that now as something that's so valuable and that every family should have. And I know every family doesn't have it because there's so many different circumstances. You know, you lose loved ones before, you know,
I mean, but
earlier
this
than we would like to.
This is a good message for even parents now. Like, when they get older, and when their kids get older, if they have kids, like, put this into perspective. Like, you want to be that person.
Yes.
So, you know, even if your parents are not in the picture, for example, like my parents are not in the picture, but I want to be that grandparent.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you are listening, just take this.
And sometimes, you know, kids are not very expressive. They don't really know, you know, they just look up to us. Whatever we show them is what they learn. But that makes such an impact on kids. To have not just mom and dad involved, showing them love and affection, but having grandma and grandpa, uncle and auntie, you know, just calling them, seeing how they're doing, you know, whatever it is, just staying connected in some way, shape, or form. Even if you don't have them, like, let's say, really close to you, because, you know, sometimes families, you know, one lives in one state, the other one lives in the other state. Just simply, like, calling them sometimes and, like, finding out, like, what they're doing, how they're feeling, you know, what's new. And once in a while, just getting together is invaluable. Like, it's so valuable. And so, yeah, it's definitely put a lot of things into perspective for me. Seeing, this is why I also feel like it's important. Sometimes we focus so much on everything that, let's say, is going wrong in the world. And, you know, oh my God, like, families are not the same like before, you know, kids are disrespecting their parents, and, you know, like, marriages aren't lasting, blah, 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 blah. But the families that actually have good things going on with them, sometimes because we are good in our own families, we don't share our happiness and the good things that are happening to us within our families, right? And that's why I feel like it's so important sometimes to share the good news, to share that this is still possible, to share that having a nice, healthy family is still possible. And I know there's a lot of negativity online, and there's a lot of, you know, back and forth and fighting, men versus women, and, you know, whether you should have children or not. But I know there's more good than bad. It's just, like I've say repeatedly, bad is always louder. Yeah. You know, the bad stuff always catches the headlines because it catches more attention. But I think this is why it's important to model healthy family behavior. Because for me, for example, like I say, I didn't really grow up with my grandparents. My grandfather from my mother's side, because I really didn't have a relationship from my father's side, is just my mother's side. My grandfather already passed. My grandmother is still with us. And, you know, I have love for her because I know she is a great woman, and she raised all my aunts and uncles in a great way. She's a great woman. I have so much respect for her. But I never really had to get to have that close relationship with her because I didn't grow up with her close. She was in the Dominican Republic and we were here in the United States. But me seeing other families, right, even if it's now like on the baseball field, you know, or wherever we put our kids for activities, me seeing other families and that dynamic of how grandparents are so involved in, let's say, their grandkids' activities gives me an example of what I would like for my family. You know, gives me a perspective on who I would want to be as a grandmother.
Yeah, there's some kids that we haven't even met their parents. Like we have a relationship with their grandparents, and it's just like they're there every practice, every game.
Right. Which, you know, in part sucks that the parent can't be that involved, but is also a beautiful thing that they have grandparents that are so involved. Yeah. So, you know, everybody has their own circumstances. I'm not no one to say, oh, my God, shame on those parents for not being there for their kids. But the fact that they have grandparents who are so involved in their grandkids' activities, you know, extracurricular activities, it's just something that I admire a lot.
Definitely.
So before I guess this message is for grandparents. Before we're so quick to say, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm judging you as a grandparent, because I know everyone has a different story, different circumstances, different upbringings. But before we're so quick to say, it's not my job to take care of your kids, I already raised you. Let's really think about the big picture, right? And the importance,
how much they need you,
and how you shape your grandkids' lives in so many ways, and how you're such an important and key role in that kid's upbringing. Sometimes we don't give enough credit to grandparents and how important they are in the family unit. Yeah. So before we sound a little selfish, right? And say, you know, it's my life now, I get to be free. Sure, yes, you get to be free. Do whatever. I'm that person who sometimes on the weekends, I have a lot of things to do, and I think for a second, maybe I'll drop off the kids at mommy's house. And then I take a step back, and I'm like, they were there at least for an hour or 2 hours. every day last week. Let me give her a break. I'm that daughter. Like,
let's try to make this happen.
I say, you know what? My mom deserves a break. That's another part of this equation. Let's have empathy as, with our parents. Let's not just throw them into them because, oh, you're the grandparent. Like, this is what you should be doing. No, let's help each other out without abusing one another. That's really what it should come down to. And let's be considerate of one another. I try to be as considerate as possible with my mother, when it comes to taking care of my children. And I try to also make sure my kids understand that they need to respect them just like they respect me, and how I expect them to respect any elder who is respectful to them, of course. So let's look at the big picture. Like, let's come together and let's, fight for our families. Let's make sure that our families have the healthiest family dynamic possible. None of us are perfect. We will never be. Your mother is not going to always be perfect. Your father's not always going to be perfect. We're not always going to be perfect. But if we're there for each other unconditionally, and if we're able to forgive one another and walk through life with a heart of empathy, very little things can go wrong, when it comes to raising your family, when you have that kind of unity. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I just food for thought, just really think about how you as a grandparent, how you
the human,
as an auntie, as an uncle, impact the little ones that are growing up. Like, really just think about it from a perspective of, what do you give? Like, it doesn't have to be money. Like, you don't have to be a person who has money to show that you love and appreciate a little one. Sometimes people may think like, I know there's people that don't have enough money, let's say, mm-hmm. and they feel like, let's say when birthdays comes around or Christmas, I don't really have that much money to give them like something expensive. That's not the most important thing.
Yeah. Sometimes I just want like a cake and to see you there.
It's not the most important thing. Anything you do to just remind that child that you're there, that you love them, that you care for them being okay, that's what's important.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, most kids don't understand what, like,
the value of money.
The value of money and what something costs. So to them, it's just like, hey, this costs $1. Cool.
Yeah.
This costs $100. Also cool.
Yeah. I mean, one person that comes to my mind is like my dad. Like, my dad doesn't have money. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have money to be or giving my kids expensive things, but he'll on his way home, like, stop at the store and buy them like a little candy, and they're like the happiest ever just because he brought them candy, or anything, some chips, a donut, whatever it is, just to show them that you're thinking of them. Yeah. It that is just so valuable. So yeah.
That's all for today's video.
Yeah.
Next time we see you will be triple digits, answering your questions. Make sure you send us a message on Instagram at jessica.darwin or leave them in the comment section of this video.
That's it for today's podcast, you guys. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Until next time.
Peace.